Welcome to Neurodivergent Pulse, where we explore the often misunderstood world of neurodivergence with experts, parents, teachers, and therapists. Grounded in lived experience, each bite-sized episode gives you something practical to try. I am your host, Laetitia, AI expert, neurodivergent mom and founder of Understanding Zoe. This podcast is recorded on Daryl country. I acknowledge that sovereignty was never ceded. It always was and always will be Aboriginal land. Hello and welcome to the Neurodivergent Pulse podcast to Eliza and Kristy.
Hi. Hey, Laetitia.
It's lovely to welcome the both of you to share a bit more about online support and how that can happen for neurodivergent families, neurodivergent folks. But before we dive into this topic of today, I would love for all of you to introduce yourself, because Belongside Families, which you both work for, describe itself as family-led. So I would love for you to share with us what's your journey ending up joining Belongside Families?
Do you want to go first, Eliza, or shall I? Our journey joining Belongside.
So I'm a parent of 3 amazing ADHD little people. And I guess I came to Belongside Families just desperate for information, wanting to know how I could support my kids. And along the way, I found out about myself as well. So I'm autistic and ADHD, if you haven't heard that before, blend. So, and I just loved it. I mean, it was a space that I found myself really comfortable in. I really enjoyed all the learning. I liked contributing. Me being me, I kind of just couldn't shut up. Every workshop and stuff, because I love that learning. I love to share and I love to have these conversations. And I guess that unable to shut upness was kind of wonderful for me, because it showed, my passion showed through, and I was asked if I wanted to come on board and work with Belongside. So I've been really thrilled to do that. It's really a joy for me.
I love it. And your energy definitely shines through.
Oh, thank you.
Wonderful. Kristy, what about you? What's been your journey?
Oh, I love the unable to shut upness. That's great, Eliza. I actually came through Belongside. Surprisingly, it wasn't for my own child. So like Eliza, I have a young human. I only have one, not 3. I've got one. He's an ADHD. Along the way, I found out that is me too. He got it from his mama. But it was way back in the early days for us, and I was struggling myself. I'm like, I couldn't figure out how to manage everything myself, and I felt like I just wasn't looking after myself. And I had a friend who told me about this Healthy Mothers, Healthy Families program. I was like, what is this? And she told me it's through Belongside Families. I went and did that, and I made like the first doctor's appointment I had in 5 years. It helped me center back to myself, and then it just kept going on, like with the learning about our families and connecting with peer groups. Also, like Eliza, I cannot shut up. But I was asked to join the team as I think a warm voice of lived experience. I'm a pretty nice human being. I think most of us are. But I found that I was able to relate to so many people. So yeah, they asked me to come on board as a facilitator, and it has just gone strength from there. It's like I genuinely love my job. I love the work we do.
Mm-hmm. And I love the work you do. It's wonderful to meet both of you. I've heard so many beautiful things about the both of you. So it's lovely to have you on the podcast. And I know we're going to have a beautiful conversation. So before we get into online support, I think it's important to know that online group and online support looks different depending on which group you join. So with Belongside Family, as I said, it's family-led, and that's how they describe their mission. So what does that actually mean in the day-to-day, and how does it shape the way you show up
for parents through those online peer group, online support group? How does that define everything?
I love this question, because the thing is, like, family-led, it can sound like a bit buzzwordy, right? Like something you see on an advertisement and go, all right, but what does that actually mean? Basically for us, it's pretty simple. We are the families. Like, every person on our team is a parent or a carer of a child with disability, developmental delay, autism. Some of us are disabled too. Like we said, I'm ADHD. So there's no clocking off from this. It's just, this is my life. And, you know, we get it. The school calls, the NDIS reviews, the waiting, the advocating when you're already exhausted, but you still need to make school lunches, and, you know, you got to find your kid's favorite squishmallow, and you're still listening to all the facts that they're spouting about Minecraft. So we're not guessing what families need. Like, we're living it alongside them. But that said, it's not just our team we're relying on. So, like, we're listening to the families, the parents, the carers that are in our community, and we're really responsive to our community. And I'm really, really proud of that fact. Like, we've had parents saying school is really hard right now. So that shapes the topics we talk about in our peer groups. It shapes the webinars and guest speakers we get coming in. It shapes the resources we create. It shapes what workshops we run that term. So if people are feeling isolated, we really lean into peer connection, and, you know, that comes from being around other people who really understand this life. And I think a good example of that responsiveness and that following that family-led is we had, you know, we have a program called, you know, a one-on-one connect. We actually get to call in and talk to another human being. And this came from families telling us, I just need someone to talk this through, someone who gets it, someone who's going to help me figure out what the next steps are, but I don't have to explain the whole situation because they already have some basic understanding there. So I think that's very, very much that family-led philosophy, you know, and that flexibility, because nothing, we all know, nothing about our lives is neat. It's not predictable. We would like it to be, but it's not. So how you access support shouldn't have to be like that either. So yeah, family-led isn't just a tagline. It means we're not sitting above families. We're actually beside them. Everything we offer comes from that place, which I think is really important.
Beautiful. I love it. And it's really what I think is more and more needed in the space, is the anchoring into the lived experience and the shared understanding, where, as you said, you don't have to explain everything for someone else to either not understand you, gaslight you, or just asking more questions than you want to answer. You actually want to be the one feeling supported. So I just love the way you framed it. And something that we share as a core value with Understanding Zoe and Belongside Families is the neuroaffirming approach. So that guides me to the next question, which is, what does a neuroaffirming approach, a neurodiversity affirming paradigm approach look like when you're supporting families in an online space? And why does that distinction matter so much? Because I want to make sure that our listeners know that they are safe space and not so safe space online. And so would you like to share a bit with us about what does it mean, and then why is that so important?
Yeah, look, that's fair enough. Everyone is kind of claiming to be neuroaffirming right now. So it is good to ask what services mean by that, and like how they embody it, so we can know, is that really going to be an affirming support for my child? But even when we know what that looks like for our kids, then how can we apply it for ourselves and for our families? So at Belongside, we know that some of our families are noticing, hey, maybe my child is holding up a mirror for me. Maybe some of their challenges are my challenges too. And, you know, we do have lots of parents, and self included, that have gone on to investigate the possibilities of neurodivergence for themselves, maybe pursuing diagnosis, or maybe just recognizing a need to accommodate themselves in their way of learning, of socializing, and managing the fluctuations in capacity that we have day to day. So we take a neuroaffirming approach to online peer support by starting with the ways that people in the group might simply process information. We don't want to just like tolerate different ways of processing. We want to design for those ways from the ground up. So we try to move away from the idea that there is one right way to show up. And like when we're putting together a workshop, this looks like sensory and cognitive accessibility. So right at the very start, you're going to be told camera on or off is fine. Use the chat box if speaking out loud isn't going to work for you tonight. You know, feel free to move your body, use fidgets. So sometimes we have parents that will come and listen while they're folding their laundry or doodling or knitting or whatever, and that's totally fine. We will also provide resources, so like cheat sheets, case studies, templates, because we don't expect people to remember everything. We know that those valuable conversations we're having might also have a component of cognitive load. You know, there's that multitasking element of processing information while you're also showing, oh yes, I'm being attentive, I'm participating. And for some of us, that's really, really hard. And we don't want parents to have to mask. Like a lot of us have absorbed this idea that how we connect or the ways that we listen, the ways that we learn are somehow wrong. So when we can create a space in our workshop that says, you know, just come as you are, we're not saying that to be friendly. We're actually lowering a barrier to learning. I think that's why it's really important to make that distinction. You know, if a parent is not exhausted by trying to sit still or trying to make eye contact or to look like they're engaged or to pretend that the environment around them is totally peaceful, like come on, as if, you know, that there's going to be no interruptions, then they can have the capacity to engage with the content and to connect with others that are going through similar things. So that's the value there.
I love it. Thank you, Eliza, for sharing this. And it's really something that goes to everything. So anyone who is listening to this and, you know, in understanding how we can bring that into the education approach, how we can bring that into the online learning approach, how we can bring that into university, into the workplace for meetings and so on. I really love this this affirming lens that you put here and creating a sense of safety so that we can unmask as adults and as children. Love it. So which is, again, a beautiful way for us to go back to you, Kristy, about, and maybe you're not the one answering this question, sorry for throwing it at you, but the themes that you mentioned that are shaping the topic of Belongside Family Workshop and so on. What are the themes that you're hearing out the most right now from families? And what do those tell us about what's missing in the support landscape in Australia mostly, but then maybe you also have an idea outside of Australia?
Yeah, look, honestly, the biggest thing we're hearing right now is exhaustion, isolation, and a lot of fear. A lot of it. Parents are tired, and like just not just tired, but they're like bone weary, the kind where you're holding everything together on the outside, but like underneath, you're like that little duck swimming, there's a lot going on. You know, there's this real fear about the future, changes to systems, uncertainty, and like trying to figure out as well what's actually true and what's helpful for you. So we're seeing like the families are spending so much time just trying to navigate everything on their own, and it is overwhelming. It is so much. So I think something that really stays with me at the moment is like what happens when parents come into a peer group for the first time. Like I've heard people say, I've never actually spoken to other people who get this before, or I've never said this out loud before, because, you know, sometimes it doesn't feel like you're around other people who get what you're going to say, and you might feel like there's going to be judgment. Yeah, no, we've had these like really raw moments where someone who's been like holding everything together for so long, and when they're sitting in that space where they don't have to explain, they don't have to justify, they don't have to, you know, hold everything together, and they just kind of fall apart a little bit, but in a really good way, because they're finally being seen and they're being held by people who get it. So, and we're seeing that this is like really becoming especially true for families who are like in regional, rural and remote areas where services, they're limited, wait lists ridiculously long, And like even just finding another parent who understands feels impossible. So when people are like, you know, hopping on online and suddenly there are people across from them on the screen nodding along and sharing like those similar experiences, it's life-changing to know that you're not so alone. You're not sitting in that isolation. And I think that's one of the beautiful things that, like, even though like a lot of these groups online, it works. Like you don't have to get everybody out the door, which we know is a mammoth task in itself. Like you could be at home in your jammies or your trackies. No one cares how you're dressed. You're still able to connect with the people who see you and get you. And I think that that's a joy. And I honestly wish that there were more of these spaces, because it's that connection. When it happens, like you can visibly see like the weight lift from some people, and like we've seen friendships blossom between people in like different parts of the country, and I think that tells a lot about what's missing. It's not just, you know, this desperate need for more information and more services. They are desperately and sorely needed, but it's a connection as well. It's the parents having that space where they feel safe and understood and not by themselves. So yeah, it's that connection. I think it matters so much more than we realize at times. I really do.
Completely. And with that, you know, I really feel from my own lived experience exactly what you described. And through the research that we did on 1091 family, which is called Making the Invisible Visible last year, we realized that 93% of the respondents who are parents of neurodivergent children said they felt misunderstood and invisible. And this sense of isolation and overwhelm came back very highly ranked as well in terms of percentage. And as you've mentioned, you know, earlier, your ADHD and your, you know, your child is as well, which is my journey as well. It's really very often. So in our research, 63% of the parents identify as neurodivergent while raising neurodivergent kiddos. So you have to navigate your own neurodivergence whilst supporting neurodivergent kiddo. And this is the things that can really get you feel misunderstood by many and invisible, and finding those connections, you know, just here being on the screen, 3 ADHD raising ADHD children. I'm like, yeah, this is not the topic. Let's not go off track. This is my ADHD brain. Let's go off track. No, we follow the question. So I have another question for you now, which is, how do you create, because, you know, it's like great online support. I'm in regional area, would love to join this, but how do I feel safe? How do we create this genuine sense of safety? Because we all know that some online spaces may not be so safe for us. So how do you create this genuine sense of safety and this sense of belonging in an online environment, potentially for family who may have been burnt before? You know, we unfortunately see like so many unsafe spaces. So how do you create that genuine sense of safety?
Yeah, I think that's a big one, because a lot of the families that we meet have been through the ringer. You know, they've felt judged. They felt like they've got this perception that they're not parenting the right way for a group or something, and as if there's one right way. Or they've just been in groups that just don't feel safe. So for us, creating safety starts with a really clear set of guidelines. We aren't here to push one particular approach to parenting or to disability support. We're actually really big on the idea that the parent is the expert on their own unique child. So my job, Kristy's job, all the facilitators, we just want to empower the parents' decision-making to look at what aligns with their personal values and then bring that to how they support their kid or how they advocate. And because we're online, we are coming from all over the place. We have totally different cultural contexts, different financial situations, different access to services based on where we live. You know, we're so eclectic, and I think we really value that difference. We're not aiming to collect a room full of people who think exactly the same. The difference in perspective in the groups is where the value is. So sometimes that sense of belonging can come from the solidarity. Like it's quite refreshing to have a space where you can say, hey, I am having the crappiest week, or, you know, I'm so over this particular battle, and you will know that someone's going to get it. way more than, say, a typical parents group where the conversations are more about like textbook milestones, or whether it's better to, you know, opt for after school ballet or French language classes for enrichment, you know. But that said, we're also really mindful of how we share the battles, you know, the challenges. We talk about sharing with care. So we know that some of us are carrying a lot. We don't want to offload in a way that might be harmful to others in a group. So our spaces, they are all facilitated, they are moderated, and we make sure that we're directing the conversation in a way that's really quite positive and strengths-based. We want to focus on solutions to those common challenges that we all face. Another thing is we really love to talk about who our kids actually are. So that's stuff like, you know, what are they good at? What do they like? What brings the family joy? And I think that's such a relief for parents as well, when so many spaces, so many of like the service providers, even the educators, might be just focusing the discourse on deficits, or telling you all the things that you should be doing to get your child to catch up. But we're not positivity washing either. You know, that's not something we want to do. If a parent is exhausted and they're burnt out, we acknowledge that. And if it's a season where peer support just is not enough, then we'll help them to connect to, say, one-on-one counselling or specific advocacy advice or something else that's really specific to their needs. But ultimately, establishing that safety that we want to get in the groups, it's about reserving judgment, and it's reinforcement that everyone does belong here. You know, you don't have to be a certain type of parent or type of advocate or type of person to have a seat at the table with us. We all belong.
I love that. I love that. And it's such in the name, right? Belongside. But it's really that, how do we create that sense of safety, and then trust can be built. So maybe I will just jump to another question in the list, which is about you. You know, we talked about, and we use on understanding Zoe as well, around holding both evidence-based practices and anchored in lived experience. So how do you balance those two, and how do we make sure that this is something that for our listeners, they start understanding that it's both have a beautiful harmony to find together, and it's not one or the other. They can live together.
Yeah, absolutely. Like, I don't think it's a balancing act. I don't think it's, you know, that one form of information has to sit countering the other. As for that, like evidence-informed practice, I want to say that the premise of all the information that we pass on is it does need to be based on evidence. It needs to be drawn from the right resources and really quite objective, you know, like not swayed by our personal opinions. But then we'll get that information and we will run that through, you know, so we've got, here's what the research says, here's the best practice guidelines, here's the recommended approach. Then we're going to run that through the filter of lived experience. So we do feel a serious responsibility to make sure everything that we are putting out there has a solid foundation. It's grounded in actual studies, it's grounded in professional practice. But the thing is that research can be really dry, or quite often it's written by people who have never actually tried to co-regulate a child when they're hitting their own sensory threshold. So like if I'm creating a resource or a scenario for a workshop, I'm constantly asking things like, does this actually work when there are siblings in the picture too? Or does it work if the family doesn't like have a backyard? Does it work at 5 p.m. on a Tuesday when everyone's hungry and the baby is screaming? If the research says do X, but lived experience tells us that X is actually impossible for a parent in burnout, or like it doesn't respect that child's autonomy, then we're going to pivot. So we want to get creative with ways that the concept can actually realistically work. So like we've got the what, but then we use that lived experience to find the how. And we might even ask the participants in a group for different examples of how they've made it work. And that's an opportunity for that diversity of experience to really shine. A great example of that is our workshop for autistic families. We take those high-level concepts like, nervous system regulation, and then we turn them into something that takes into account the realities of supporting your own needs while you're supporting your child, while you're probably also trying to work and maintain relationships and deal with school and therapies. Like, all that stuff doesn't seem to get accounted for in combination unless you have that lived experience. So we're going to use the evidence to explain why something is happening when we put a resource out there or we do a workshop, but then we use our lived experience to create the how, and the way that people can actually apply that understanding, given that our lives are messy, our lives are complicated. This is the reality.
And I think that's what's missing many times, actually, is just you read this advice online, or you read this, great strategy or this great tactic or this great thing, and then you're like, but in our context, it is inapplicable. And then this is where the sense of, not providing what you should provide, all of those should and could and would, but actually you just can't. So finding ways that can work for everyone is actually beautiful. And I love what you just said. So I'm just going to move to the final question. I would love for any of you to share something that you've witnessed. Maybe it's a moment, maybe it's a conversation that made you think, this is what truly supportive online space look like. This is what truly online safety look like.
Yeah, look, I'm happy to do this one, Eliza, because this has happened just recently, actually, and it has been amazing. And it was in one of our peer groups. We had a couple of people who, hadn't met each other before, and it was a really quiet group. There was just 4 of us in there. We were just having this great chat, and it was around like one of those heavy things. Look, it was around school. Yeah, see, look at all your faces. We know how hard this landscape is for us neurodivergent humans and our children. So there's so many layers to this, right? But then we had these 3 parents who came in, and they were all communicating in different ways. Like, we had somebody in chat, we had somebody on camera nattering away, and we had somebody doing a combination of both. And these 3 people truly saw each other and the struggles that they were having at that time. I am not going to lie, I actually got really teary at one point, nice teary, because hearing how they saw each other's strengths and they saw the tough times that were happening, that they were genuinely there with like the most amazing care for each other. The way they showed up with people that they had just met absolutely blew my mind. I started to cry. They started to cry. It was lovely. It sounds, you're like, oh good, I'm going to cry, but I'm going to cry. It was nice crying. But it was just so nice to see how safe they felt to A, be that vulnerable, and to be able to like crack this big hard exterior open and to show people what is happening on the inside. And then 2, to be able to feel connected enough with somebody to be able to receive what they were saying. So they were able to problem solve for each other. And it just felt so safe and warm. I felt like I witnessed something incredibly special, and this doesn't happen all the time, and it was just really unique. These people actually went off and they were like, can we stay in touch with each other? They want to form their own little group, but they actually just talk to each other online as well now. And these are people from all different parts of Australia. That blew my mind, and I just thought this is why we do this work. This is why we're here. It made my heart so full. Yeah, I've been telling everybody about it. I'm like, this was amazing. This is why we do this. And yeah, they even messaged afterwards to say thank you, because they hadn't felt seen. They had felt isolated. And I think that's, again, so much of this isolation, and then getting this connection, and yeah, being seen, feeling safe, but also being open enough to the experience as well.
I love that. Thank you for sharing, Kristy.
You're welcome.
Share one, Eliza, or do I move to the next?
Well,
question?
I had a similar thing. I had a group recently, which was a bit of a small group, and I was like, oh oh, not many people showed up. But sometimes, you know, it doesn't matter about the size of the group. And it was just a little intimate group that night. And at the end of it, one of the women in it was saying, this has been so refreshing to be in a space with, I'm guessing, mostly neurodivergent women who get it, who, you know, we get this message that somehow we're doing it wrong, we're handling our children's struggles wrong, or, you know, we're being too helicopterish or something. That's just disability support. You know, it's not helicopter parenting. There's the looking from the outside. I think that people that don't have that experience do not get it and can really misread it. So it is really refreshing to be in a space where other people understand and can see what you're doing and can see the support needs that exist within your family and the way that you're approaching it, and the just the struggle, not wanting to be overbearing, wanting to foster independence, wanting to do all the things to help your child feel nurtured and to thrive. It's a battle it's not common to all typical parenting. So when you're in that space with other people who understand where you're coming from, it is refreshing. That's a great word. It's refreshing. That's what she said.
Yeah. And as I said, it's backed by data. You know, it's like 93% of those families feel misunderstood and invisible. So that's definitely a solution to that. Gathering with neurokin and peers who actually understand what you're going through, so you finally feel visible and understood. I love that. So for anyone who is listening to this podcast, like, oh my gosh, I would love to be in an online space like this and you know, explore Belongside Family. How can they access resources and learn more about Belongside Family's work? Belongside Families is everywhere on our website as well. It's a partner and we highly support them, but you can access them also through the show notes. So would you mind sharing any way you can access the support?
Absolutely. The easiest way, hop on our website, belongsideFamilies.org.au. Through there, you can immediately, you can sign up to our newsletter if you're like, I just want to do a vibe check, see if this is the right place for me. You can check out our socials, Belongside Families. But yeah, directly through our website, you can get to all of our events. Everything's free, by the way, folks. It's all free support. Like, that's one huge thing that we probably should have told you. But yeah, you can access immediately. So you can jump onto our website, you can look at our events, and you can be like, oh wow, these are the events that they have coming up for the rest of the term. You can access like a library of webinars that we have previously recorded. We have a whole library specifically dedicated to our autistic and neurodivergent kiddos and families. We have a autistic families workshop coming up. We've got a whole heap of stuff. So yeah, the best way to connect with us, website, socials, it's all there. We're super easy to find.
We'll put all of this in the show notes. Thank you so much, Eliza and Kristy, for joining me today. It was lovely to meet you and for you to share your experience on the podcast.
Oh, thanks, Laetitia. It's been a hoot.
That's a wrap for Neurodivergent Pulse. If this helped, follow the show and leave us a quick review on your favorite platform. You can even share this episode with someone who needs it. You can learn more about our platform at understandingzoe.com. Thanks for listening.